I remember everything. A fog of fear and confusion shrouded my earliest memories of the mansion, revealing glimpses of shadowy figures and whispers that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. I was 6 when we moved to that wretched place, and now, as I look back, I understand that the darkness that haunted me then never truly left. The mansion was an imposing structure, its grand facade and sprawling gardens masking the malevolence within. My father, the youngest son of a wealthy mill owner, had once believed he could escape the past by abandoning that accursed house. But fate had other plans. Financial ruin forced our family to return, and it was there that our nightmare began. My father had always been a man of privilege and excess. At age 18, he inherited one of his father's grand mansions. The estate was a sprawling relic of opulence, its high ceilings and ornate furnishings a stark contrast to the malevolence that brewed within. The mansion was infamous among locals for its eerie atmosphere, whispers of ghostly apparitions and mysterious deaths. My father, however, dismissed these as nothing more than old wives' tales. In his attempt to escape the suffocating shadows of the mansion, my father moved to the city. Eliza, a beautiful and enchanting woman, met him there. She was a beacon of light in his otherwise dark and troubled world. Their romance seemed perfect, and after a whirlwind courtship, she moved into the mansion with him. It was then that the rot began to set in. Eliza's arrival did little to dispel the mansion's dark aura. While she was charming, she carried with her a tempest of emotions and secrets. Despite the lavish parties and luxurious lifestyle, my father's insecurities gnawed at him. The mansion, once a symbol of his father's success, now seemed like a prison of solitude. One fateful night, after a particularly extravagant party, my father returned home early, intoxicated and disoriented. He stumbled into the bedroom, expecting to find solace in Eliza's arms, but instead he found her entwined with another man. The scene was a dagger to his heart, a betrayal that shattered his fragile sense of security. Overcome by rage and jealousy, my father's vision blurred with fury. He grabbed a steel mallet from the tool shed, its heavy head reflecting the dim light. The confrontation that followed was brutal and unrestrained. He beat Eliza mercilessly, the mallet crushing bone and flesh until she lay lifeless on the bed. Her final screams echoed through the mansion, a chilling testament to the violence that had transpired. In his frantic state, my father dragged her body to the garden, where he hastily buried her beneath the overgrown foliage. In a final, desperate attempt to hide his crime, he covered her with soil in a shallow grave, barely disturbing the earth. However, the mansion would not yield to such silence. In the days following Eliza's murder, my father realized the mansion was haunted. Whispers echoed through the halls, cold spots seemed to materialize at will, and shadowy figures lurked just beyond the edge of vision. The disturbances grew increasingly malevolent. Consumed by fear, my father fled to Michigan. There he rebuilt his life marrying Sarah, a kind and understanding woman. They had 3 children, Lily, Jacob, and me, Emma. For a time, my father believed the past horrors were behind him. 15 years after abandoning the mansion, my father faced financial ruin once more. The family had no choice but to return to the mansion, a decision that would drastically change our lives. The moment we crossed the threshold, the house seemed to come alive with a palpable sense of dread. The temperature dropped, and a suffocating stillness enveloped us. At first, the disturbances were minor, doors creaking open on their own, objects shifting imperceptibly. But soon the haunting escalated into something far more sinister. Shadows twisted and writhed, and cold spots became pervasive. I began to see fleeting glimpses of figures in the corners of my vision, their eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. My nightmares became vivid and horrifying, a relentless parade of dark, suffocating spaces and malevolent whispers. Small objects began to act out of the ordinary, like the towel that flew through the air with unnatural force, striking my father so hard in the face that it knocked him to the ground. The sheer strength of the towel was a grotesque reminder of the spirit's power. One night I woke to find myself paralyzed, my body unable to move as if weighed down by an unseen force. I could hear my parents' frantic voices downstairs, their desperation growing as they struggled to understand what was happening to me. The true horror began when I realized my voice had changed. My tone and cadence were strange. My words were accusatory and demanding. My parents were horrified. Their attempts to help me only seemed to fuel the spirit's wrath. They brought in a local priest to perform an exorcism, but his rituals only seemed to provoke the entity further. It became clear that the mansion was feeding off our fear, growing stronger with every failed attempt to rid it of its malevolent presence. The spirit was relentless. It demanded retribution for the wrongs committed within the mansion's walls. Through me, it forced my father to confront his past sins. I vividly recall the terror in his eyes as he relived the horror he had inflicted. The spirit of Eliza, the woman he had murdered, returned to exact her revenge. She wanted him to confess his crimes and suffer as she had suffered. The spirit guided us to the garden where Eliza's remains lay as the sun dipped below the horizon. The ground was unnaturally cold, and the once overgrown garden now seemed to writhe with an unseen life. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the earth seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. As we approached, the ground began to shift, and Eliza's skeletal hands erupted from the soil. Her decaying fingers reached out with a fury that seemed to shake the very foundations of the mansion. She grasped at my father with a strength that defied belief, dragging him towards the grave. His screams echoed through the night, a chilling testament to the horror that had consumed him. The earth closed over him, as though it had swallowed him whole. The mansion fell silent, the spirit's vengeance exacted. The haunting ceased, freeing me from its grasp, but the damage had already occurred. The very darkness he had tried to escape consumed my father. My mother, Sarah, faced the aftermath of my father's death. She tried to explain what had happened, but the authorities dismissed her claims as madness. They deemed her unfit to care for us, taking us away and scattering us to different homes. They left my mother alone to deal with the devastation that had befallen our family. A new family took me in, trying to understand the traumas of my past, but the scars were deep. The mansion, now abandoned, stood as a hollow monument to our suffering. The air around it still felt thick with malice, and the whispers of the past seemed to linger, a constant reminder of the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The rumors about the mansion persist to this day. People on the street claim to hear screams echoing from the estate every night, a chilling reminder of the malevolent force that once resided there. If one dares to stand on the patch of ground where Eliza's remains were buried, they risk facing the same fate as my father. People say that the tormented spirits of Eliza and my father are waiting, ready to drag anyone who treads on that cursed ground into the earth, sealing them in a grave of eternal darkness. Years have passed, and I've tried to move on, bury the past, and live a life free from the shadows of that accursed house. But the memories of the mansion, the spirit's wrath, and my father's fate continue to haunt me. The manor's malice continues to cast a dark shadow over my life, serving as a grim reminder of the vengeance that can result from allowing the past to fester.